this because it says but it could be speaking to hitting a kuti where the damage was less than a shava pruta, so they can't pay, so they would get malchus, and it's totally in whether or not you're makish hakol l'klala. Because in Sanhedrin, in the Masechah Sanhedrin, we had a Tana who held that just like you don't get malchus for cursing for being makal a kuti, so too you don't get malchus for hitting a kuti. This Bryce would have to hold that you do get malchus for hitting a kuti, and that's why the Bryce says that a Yisrael that hits a kuti or a kuti that hits a Yisrael would both be chayiv to chayiv malchus. Okay, chutz me'al yidei ger toshav. So let's take a quick peek in the Mishnah so we know what the Gemara is referencing. So it says, Ha'av goy la'idei ben, ben goy la'idei av, ha'koil goy la'idei Yisrael, Yisrael goy la'idei chutz miger toshav. So the rule that the Torah said, that the Mishnah said, was ha'koil goy la'idei Yisrael, Yisrael goy la'idei hem, chutz miger toshav. So Pashut Pshat is that a Yisrael would not be goyla al yidei ger toshav, and the ger toshav would not be goyla al yidei ger. That would be the simplest pashut pshat to read in the Mishnah. So zog to Gemara, alma ger toshav ovid kachavim. If a Yisrael does not go into golus for killing a ger toshav, and the ger toshav does not go into golus for killing a Yisrael, that means a ger toshav has the status of a goy. But that's not so simple, because a meseifa. The Mishnah then says, Ger Toshav goy la'idei der Ger Toshav. Now, if a Ger Toshav has the status of a goy, so then if a goy kills another goy b'shogeg, he's chayv misa, b'diyodim even. So the question is, what is the status of a Ger Toshav? If he's a goy, the sefer of the Mishnah doesn't make sense, and if he's a yid, the ratio doesn't make sense. Rav Kana loy kasher, kan b'Ger Toshav shahara Ger Toshav. The sefer where it says that the Ger Toshav goes into golus is where the victim of his killing b'shoigig was a ger toshav, but kan the ger toshav shar Yisrael. If a ger toshav killed a yid, that's where he's chayv misa and he doesn't go into golus. Okay, gewaltig. Zog to Gemara. Let's have a look at Rashi. Loy kasha ger toshav shahar ger toshav goyla goes into golus. That's a Meforshah Mishnah. For Reisha, where it says that by Yisrael that halacha doesn't apply, is Kisharge Yisrael Eina Goyla, the loy sogi lay begolus. Golus wouldn't be good enough for him. Ika de Rami Koyadon. There are those who on this subject ask a stira in the psukim. Ksiv it says Livnei Yisrael vilager vilatoishav besoicham tiyena sheisha orim. So clearly the Orem Miklat are made for a Ger Toshav. And then Uksiv elsewhere, V'hayu lachem ha'orem lemiklat, and we darshan lachem v'loy l'geir, davka for Yisrael. So one parasha says that a Ger Toshav is covered by the Orem Miklat, and the other pasuk seems to indicate that through a diuk that the Orem Miklat are not for Ger. Rav Kana loy kasher, kan beger Toshav shahar Yisrael. That which is lachem v'loy l'gerim, kan beger toshav shar ger toshav. There it says v'lager v'latoshav v'soy. Uramidi frek gemara akash. The Brisa says lefichach der iber ger v'ovid kachavim shahargu neharogin. A ger and a goy who kills anybody even b'shoigig neharogin is chayiv misa. Katani ger dum yudav kachavim. Since the Brisa is putting a ger and oiv come together, it would be logical to suspect that, or to conclude that they have the same halacha. Okay, so then what is the same halacha? Ma oivit kachavim loishna the kotel bar minei. It doesn't matter if a goy killed a goy, v'loishna the kotel the lav bar minei, or even if the goy killed a yid, nerak, he will be chayiv misa. A goy doesn't need Israel. Af ger, so to a ger toishav loishna the kotel bar minei. So our Mishnah says that if a ger toshav kills a ger toshav b'shogeg, he goes to golus, but from the lefichach it's mashma that he's nerag. Kan shahar goy derech yerida, kan shahar goy derech aliyah. Now we know derech yerida is what makes a Yid go into Golus, but Derech Aliyah, a Yid wouldn't go into Golus. So therefore, Derech Yerida, the Yisrael Gali, if he killed Derech Yerida B'Shoigig, where if a Yisrael did the same thing, Yisrael would go into Golus, Iunami Sogile Begolus. So too a Ger Toshav that killed a Ger Toshav would go into Golus under these same circumstances. But Derech Aliyah, the Yisrael Potter, but Derech Aliyah, where Yisrael is Potter, who Nerag, he would be killed. So even though we say in our Mishnah that a Ger Toshav who killed a Ger Toshav goes into Golus, that's only Derech Yerida, similar to when a Yisrael would go into Golus. But Derech Aliyah, he wouldn't go into Golus. He would get killed. The problem with that is Derech Aliyah more chomer or less chomer than Derech Yerida? It's less chomer because a Yid is Potter in Gansen. Because could be because normally your swing down is more for me said the swing back is just a wind up, but whatever it is, it's clear that Derech Aliyah is less chomer. So Frank Rabba Amali Rabba V'lav Kabel Chaimeru Umad Derech Yerida, that even Yisrael Gali Iunami Sagale Begalos Gos will be good enough for him. Derech Aliyah Yisrael Potter Iu Nerak. It doesn't make sense today that something that's more kal should be treated with more chumrah when we're talking about a ger toshav. Elo Amar Rabba argues on the pista, and here's a different shot. So Reb Chista's shot is to make that distinction between Derech Aliyah and Derech Yerida. Rabba has a kash on it, but that is Reb Chista's distinction. Rabba says that's not the distinction. You know what the case is? Be'omer mutter. You know when we kill the guy? By omer mutter. But omer mutter doesn't go into goals. Remember we had at the beginning of the parak that omer mutter does not go into goals. But by a Yid, he won't get killed, but he doesn't go into golos. So by a Ger Toshav, he would get killed for it by Omer Mutter. Amar le Abaye, what are you talking about? Isn't Omer Mutter onusu, which is exactly what the Gemara asked right at the beginning of the parak? Amar le, no. Shani Omer, I will say that Omer Mutter is karav lemezeru. It's worse. Not an onion, it's worse. You know why? Because you shouldn't be ignorant. You need to ask questions. You need to learn. You need to know, and therefore it's karv l'meizid, and therefore it is mistaber to say that by omer mutter a ger toishav would go while a Yisrael would be part of them kolos. A ger toishav would get killed for it. But all do the temayu.
And alpi cycle is really no difference between the derech aliyah and the derech yerida. It looks like really it's exact zakusa, right?
It is exact zakusa, you're right.
So by Yisrael with exact zakusa, okay, Derech Aliyah is exact, but by Ger Toshav, why doesn't it have the same?
Why should it be worse? Why would he get killed for it? We're saying he gets killed for it. We're saying he's certain cherger.
So there with this is the rule here. Sorry.
So the rule is it should go to Shogig. If it's Shogig, it should go to Gulas.
But we have a rule for Yisrael that by going up, he doesn't go to Gulas. So if he doesn't go to Gulas, he gets killed. It's in Higoyim and when the Rebbe Shimon gesagt for the Ben Noach, make dienen, right? That machen dienen, that makes sense, right? So by Gos, it's if I killed him this way or that way, if it's called
but amazing. And we're not talking about a guy, we're talking about a Ger Toshav. A Ger Toshav clearly has properties of a Yid, the Haraya, but a regular guy who kills even Derech Yerida B'Shoigig gets killed. But a Ger Toshav has properties of a Yid. So the question is, how do you know to be Mechalik? Derech Yerida. So we have over here a machloikis between Reb Chista and Rabba, what the situation is with Omer Mutter. Is Omer Mutter considered onus? And if it's considered onus, you can't taina that a guy should get killed for, a ger toshav should get killed for it. But if you all Omer Mutter is karvel mezid, then it's mistaber. So Rabba learns Omer Mutter is karvel mezid, that's why a ger toshav can get killed for it. Reb Chista obviously disagrees because he would have rather said the teretz of Omer Mutter than Derech Aliyah, Derech Yerida. Reb Chista couldn't say the teretz of Omer Mutter because he'll do anonymous. So Zoglev Ozlu Tamayu, this question as to whether or not Omer Mutter is oinus or if it's karvel mezid is actually a registered known machlokes between Rabba and Reb Chisda. The Itmar, we had a machlokes. Kesover behema v'nimtzadam. Somebody thought that he was killing a behema, and it turned out being a person. Or Kanani v'nimtza ger toshev. Rav Amar Chayiv. Rav said that the person would be chayiv to go to goy. He would be killed. Why? Because Eimer Mutter Karav L'Meizenu. That's Rabba Shita. It's not Rabba. Rabba Shita is Eimer Mutter is Karav L'Meizen. Reb Chisda held was an Einis. Reb Chisda Reb Potter. Why? Because Eimer Mutter Adasu. So you see, this is a machlokes. How you look at Eimer Mutter, the fact that he didn't know. You want to know why is Eimer Mutter? Why would Kesover Behema V'Nimtz Adam? Why would that be comparable to Eimer Mutter? So Rashi tells us why. Kesover Behema Harezek Eimer Mutter. It's just like Eimer Mutter. It's a lack of investigation. Shahayile Lilmoid by Eimer Mutter we say what's his priya? He should have learned halachas. A person has the right to remain ignorant of the halacha. The Avzeh, and this person as well, he should have made sure that it was a behema. Uveger toishev askinon, and this discussion is speaking by a ger toishev. So you see how that machlokes.
That's why he's not ignorant. Are you too ignorant? Ger toishev, but
I hear. So that's so it could be. So you wanted maybe that's a machlokes Rav and Reb Chisda or the ger toishev that I've learned. Very good. Zok Gemara Esvei Rava l'Reb Chisda. Rava had a classic Reb Chisda. So now we're going to prove that Eimer Mutter is Karav L'Meized. What did HaKadosh Baruch Hu tell? This is Parai? Yeah, this is Parai. It's Avimelech. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him, let's look at the pasuk. It says, Vayovai Elokim El Avimelech. Yeah. V'chaloim Alayla. Vayomer Loi. Hincha Meis, you're going to die. Alo Isha Asher Lakachta. V'hibulas Baal. This woman who you want to have relations with, he never did. She's a Be'ulas Baal. So Hincha Meis Alo Isha Asher Lakachta. My love, B'diyada. Pashup Pshat is with Meis. You'll have a Chiv B'diyada. As Rashi says, my love B'diyada, B'dini B'nei Noyach. This is Mamash case of Eimer Mutter. Kesavar Achoyz Avrami. So you see that B'nei Noyach, Chayiv Musa for Eimer Mutter because it's Karav L'Meized. Zoktimar lawyer Chisda will say no. B'dei Shemayim. It doesn't mean there'll be a Chiv B'dei Adam. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu said Chinuch HaMeis, it'll be B'dei Shemayim because B'dei Adam there's no Chiv Misa for a Goy at Eimer Mutter. Dekanami, and I could prove it to you that when it says Hin Chameis, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu said Hin Chameis, it means B'dei Shemayim, not B'dei Adam. Tichsiv mei chatoi li. So what does the pasuk say? Vayomer Elav hu Elakim v'chaloim gam anoichi yodati ki b'sam levavcha osisasais. I know that you didn't know that she was a married woman. V'echzach gam anoich gam oischa v'echzach gam anoichi oischa mechatoi li. I actually prevented you from being nishul in this avera. Al kein loy nisaticha l'ngoya ela. That's why I didn't let you touch her. So it says mechatoi li. So when the Hashem said mechatoi li means it wasn't a chait that would be punishable with the Adam. It's mechatoi li. It's something that I will deal with. Practically Gemara. Just because it says mechatoi li, that doesn't mean it's not punishable with the Adam. It could be punishable with the Adam, and I'll prove it to you. Because Otamech, Yosef said, "How could I be mizana with Eishes Petivar? V'chatasi le'lokim." That was the lashon that Yosef said. Let's have a look. Eineni gadol b'bayis hazeh mimeni. He told Eishes Petivar. V'lechazach mimenu mu'uma kim ha'ischa asher at ishtoi v'chetza ra gedola azois v'chatasi le'lokim. So the chatasi le'lokim v'loy la'adam v'lo yedeya. Yosef knew that she was an Esashish, and therefore sure the V'chatasi L'Lekim would invoke a punishment b'dei Adam. So just because it says Mechatoi Li by Avimelech, that doesn't mean he wouldn't be subject to a punishment b'dei Adam. What's pshat? What's pshat on what Yosef said? Elidinoi Moser L'Adam. The chait might be to the Rebbeinu Shalom, but the carrying out of the punishment is Moser L'Adam. Hachanami, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Avimelech mechatoi li, it could be dinei maser la'adam. So therefore, it's possible to say that this Eimer Mutter is Karav L'Meized, but it's also possible to say that Omer Mutter is an oinus, you could learn either way.
What is it to say?
Why not?
He did investigation. Right? He asked. And by the
It's a beautiful kasha. Let's see how the Gemara fears us. Eisvei Abai l'Rav. Break the Abai kasha to Rav. What did Avimelech tell the Rebbeinu Shalom? Avimelech lekorv Elah v'yomer Hashem Hagoy Gam Tanak Tarik. Are you going to kill me? I'm innocent. So once again, he made such a taina. We don't see up as a teretz. So you have a right that it's Omer Mutter is an oinus. You have a right to Pchista. So what are you talking about? Let's look at the teretz where HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not accept. He rejected Avimelech's taina that Omer Mutter is oinus. Rather, Omer Mutter is chayiv. Why? Because what does the pasuk continue to say there? Give back this woman, because her husband is a novi. This is a beautiful Gemara. It's a very famous Gemara. Eishes novihu, the tahader, the lav novi, lav tahader. What does it mean? Hashem told Avimelech, give her back because she's a neshes novi. And if she wasn't a neshes novi, she was a regular Eishes ish. Are you suggesting that Avimelech wouldn't have to give her back? Ella, what HaKadosh Baruch Hu was telling Avimelech is you are a poisheya, like Chaim brought up. And look at the Amar Rab Shmuel bar Nachmani. The Amar Rab Shmuel bar Nachmani, Amar Rab Yonasan, Hachi ka Amar. This is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu was telling Avimelech. Give her back because she's a neshes. Nothing to do with the fact that her husband is an ovi. You have a taina. You want to claim innocence. It's not your fault. You didn't know she was married. Avram told you that she was his sister. That's nonsense. You should have seen right through that. Novayu. Avram Avinu is a novi. In other words, he was a maven. He understood. He understood when you asked, who is this woman, what you were looking for. He's not an idiot. From your crude questioning, it was obvious to him that his life was in danger had he told you that this woman was his wife. Someone comes to the city. What do they ask you by customs? Do they ask him, do you need a hotel? Do you need a drink? Can we help you? Can we accommodate you in any way? Is that what they start asking him about the women, who these women are? That shows what a noyif you were, and he knew that you would kill him if he was married to this woman. So therefore, don't hack me in kaparain that how should you have known? So you're chayiv because Omer Mutter is karav lamezid, and your excuse that I looked into it is kanteresnish, because the way you looked into it would have induced Avraham Avinu not to risk his life. Now the Gemara fears ois, mikan sheben noach nerag shahoyle lumod v'lo lama. Ben Noach will get killed. Why? If he is an Omer Mutter. Now, this is all according to Rabba. Rab Chisda is going to have to learn Anders Pshat, right? So Rab Chisda holds it was a whole Luzach. It wasn't a response to the Baruch was saying to Avimelech was not a response. It's Taina. He was Moida Omer Mutter is Takan Oinis, but he said there's another Taina here that he shouldn't have been asking. He should have learned Derech Eretz. He shouldn't have been asking about this because this is not appropriate. Good old thing. That's what Tosha says. That's exactly where I got it from. I didn't make it up. I should have said Tosha says because I said it's my own voice, but it's not. It's what I saw in Tosha. And the reason why I didn't say it B'Shem Tosha is because just in case I didn't say it over right, I didn't want to blame Tosha for my voice. But that's how I understood Tosha. Tosha is a little bit complex because Tosha also brings a second shot even in Rabble. So it gets a little bit complicated. Hasuma ein goyle. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Someone who's blind does not go to Golos if he kills B'Shogeg. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir Omer goyle. He does go into Golos. So this, of course, will be learned out of Psukim. Hasoinei. If someone hates somebody and you kill B'Shogeg, ein goyle. He won't go into Golos. Pashas because he would have killed him anyway. The Gemara is going to have a long discussion about that. Rabbi Yosy Omer Hasoinei is nerag. They should kamut. We consider him V'adei Mezid. Rabbi Shimon Omer, it depends. Yesh soine goyle. There are some soinim that would go into golos. The yesh soine she'ena goyle. Now look into the Zaklal Hamaduyak the Mishnahs. Zaklal kol shehu yochol loimer l'das harag. If there's any potential that you could possibly argue that maybe he did it on purpose, ain't no goyla. Misafik, we don't let him go into golos. But v'shaloy das hard. But if we know kolorit v'shaloy das, we know kolorit v'shayge, then I raise a goyla. And the Gemara is going to discuss different scenarios where it's super clear that it was shayge, or where it could have been mezid, it could have been shayge. You don't know. Taner Rabbanan, beloy ra'is. So the pasuk says, when the pasuk describes what a chiyuv golos is for, the pasuk says, "V'asher," I'm sorry, loy b'chol even asher yamus ba beloy ra'is. He didn't see this particular situation. Prat l'suma, because Davka, a person who could see everything else, but punct here he didn't see the person. But someone who could never see, he would not be included in the halacha of golos. Div Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir no. Beloy ra'is l'rabbis is azuma. You're even chayv if you couldn't see. So wasn't mechilik if you could never see, or punct this time you couldn't see. That makes you tashay. My time is Rabbi Yehuda. L'may, so what's the svar Rabbi Yehuda? Yichsiv asher yavoy esrei eyu biyar. That's a very general statement. Anybody who meets his friends in the yar gets killed, would mean including everybody afilu suma. And then also beloy ra'is is a miyut. Ma'ate, it tells you that a suma is not chayv and golos. Rabbi Meir,
The second Messiah recorded in the Torah.
I'm sorry?
That Tivul Khan was a sinner. Okay.
Yeah. Rabbi Meir, beloy ra'is, but didn't he go into golos?
No.
Kai went to golos. Rabbi Meir,
And was Rose.
that's right.
Amazing.
Rabbi Meir beloy ra'is is lamait, right? That's a miyut to be ma'at suma. And the other pasuk says bivli das, which is also a miyut, which would be ma'at suma. Why do you need two miyutim for the same thing? Have a miyut achar miyut, the ein miyut achar miyut el ol rabbi. So that's how he knows that a suma is b'chuyev in golos. Rabbi Yehuda, what about Rabbi Yehuda? How come he doesn't have an extra miyut? Because he uses bivli das, prat l'mischaven hudasa, which we said at the beginning of the parak, prat l'mischaven l'har gezeh, l'har gezeh behema v'har gezeh. Zok Gemara weiter. Rabbi Yosy Yomer asoin in there. Fragt Gemara, how could you kill a soine? V'aloy loy asrube, just because he hates him and you know he wanted to kill him, but there was no hasra. Gemara Masnisen Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda. We had this exact Gemara a couple of blot ago, where the Gemara said this Rabbi Yosy is not Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda; it's a different Rabbi Yosy. Remember, Rabbi Yosy says that one guy's mastering him in the middle. The Gemara says, "I thought you don't need a surah." No, Rabbi Yosy said they both have to be mastering him. So the Gemara asked, "I thought Rabbi Yosy told you don't need a surah." And the Gemara said from this brisa to Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda. The Tanya Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda Aimer cover ain't tzar chasra lefi shalanitna surah el hafim mishayg lemezid. A soine for sure wants to kill his enemy. We don't need to be mafia.
Who says it that he's a learner?
Who said that he
learned first? Does it to the right?
So you could be he would have to be a learned person, and we're using this to say that a soine we don't need to know if he did it on purpose or not. We know for sure he did it, but maybe Chaim is saying right. Maybe even this Rabbi Yosy is only Nageya if he was learned. And it makes sense because it's the same Rabbi Yossi our Mishnah, and we're saying it's Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda. Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda says dafke when they don't need the surah, dafke if you know he's a Talmud. So you're probably right. Our Mishnah also means if he's learned and he's a soiner, you don't have to warn him. If he's learned and he wasn't a soiner, you would have to warn him. You know why? Because maybe he doesn't realize, or maybe he doesn't mean to do it. By warning him and he's doing it anyway, you know for sure he means to do it. It depends. So now we need to get into the nuances of different cases where it's obvious that he's trying to kill him or we're not. So Tanya Kate said, Omer Rab Shimon, yesh soine goyla, v'yesh soine she'ina goyla. So I'll give you examples. Nifsak goyla. What if he was holding a rock on a rope and the rope tore? There he goes from the goals because he didn't tear the rope; it tore by itself. For sure, he didn't do it on purpose. There, we know for sure that it's shaking. But nishmat, but what if the rope slipped out of his hand? It could have slipped out innocently, or he could have let go of it on purpose. So there you can't tell. Like the mission, if you can't tell, ain't a good. Frag the Gemara, Vatanya Rab Shimon Oimar, la'olam ain't a goyla, ad sheishamet machzolim yodi. Rab Shimon said that Rab Shimon, referring to Rab Shimon of our Mishnah, who hold that by a sign it depends. he says that Ritzeach who's a sign wouldn't go into Golos unless the whole trowel, Rashi teaches Machzol is a trowel. So we're talking about a guy on the roof that's smoothing out the tar. Unless the whole trowel falls out of his hand, you would not say he goes into Golos. Only then you would go into Golos. So we seem to have a steer. Kasha nifsak a nifsak. Because in the first brisa we said nifsak goes into Golos. And over here he says nifsak doesn't go into Golos unless the whole thing fell out of your hand. Nifsak means you're still holding on to something and something broke off. But when Reb Shimon said until the machzali falls out of his hand, that's more similar to nishmat. So kasha nifsak a nifsak, because by our brisa it says nifsak is goyla, but from this brisa of Reb Shimon it's mashma that nifsak is not goyla, and kasha nishmat a nishmat, because our brisa says nishmat is einay goyla. Yet here Reb Shimon says nishmat is the only place where it is goyla. Now here we're going to change the girsa that's written in our Gemara, and we're going to follow the girsa of Rashi. So zog to Gemara, nishmat a nishmat loy kasha haba oyev v'haba sayne. Nishmat a nishmat is not shver, because by an oyev nishmat goes into Golos, but by a sayne he doesn't go into Golos. Nifsak a nifsak loy kasha. Ha Rebbe, ha Rabbon. So let's have a thought about this for a second. Nishmat, nifsak means nifsak loikasha ha Rebbe, ha Rabbon. So what does nifsak? Nifsak means I'm holding on to some type of handle, and something broke off and fell away, right? And nishmat means I let go of the whole handle. Now we had a machloikis in the Mishnah earlier between Rebbe and Rabbanon. When you're chopping wood with an axe, what is the chiyuv galus for shogeg? Is it if the metal fell off the axe, the blade fell off the axe, or if a piece of wood that you chopped went flying? Right, that was a machloikis. The metal falling off the axe means you're holding on to the handle, and the metal went flying. That's something like nifsak. So according to Rebbe, nifsak would be part from Golos, because Rebbe said that if the metal blade fell off the handle of the axe, that's not what the Torah says you're going to Golos. So according to Rebbe, nifsak would not go into Golos.
Well then,
No, he doesn't have the kapara of Golos. It's still a shogeg, right? He's not v'arv'le the kamalov, but he wouldn't have the kapara of Golos by nifsak. But by nishmat is you whack the wood. Now the wood is totally disconnected from you, and the wood goes flying. That would be more similar to nishmat. So therefore, ha Rebbe, ha Rabbanan. If it was nifsak, according to Rebbe, it would be potter, and according to the Rabbanan, it would be chayiv. So now let's look at the two prices.
Why is nishmat like the? I understand why nifsak is like
because the whole wood is completely dislodged.
Right. But,
You're not.
But the wood is going to mit ein. The
But you
nishmat
never-
is like the whole axe was flat.
But you never touched it, right? If the whole axe is flying, maybe that would be a problem. Maybe that's also nishmat. The whole axe flying is also not a problem. The problem is if I'm still holding on to something. But we'll see Rashi. Rashi will be master better than I could say over Rashi. But a kolponim, we just have to figure out how the chips fall. I always like doing the inventory at the end. So Tanya, Kate Omer Rab Shimon yesh shoy de goyla v'yesh shoy she'ein goyla. Nifsak goyla. That's only according to the Rabbanon, not according to Rebbe, right? Nifsak goyla according to the Rabbanon, not according to Rebbe. Nishmat ein goyla if he's a soine, right? V'atanya Rab Shimon Omer lo olam ein goyla achi yishmat machzala miyadai. That's by a oyev. Rab Shimon says he won't go into Golos if he's a soine, only if he's an oyev. And nifsak would go into nifsak would not go into Golos because it would be going according to Rebbe, who holds by nifsak you don't go into Golos. So that's how we're learning this difference. The only thing I want to bring up is Rebbe learns nifsak ein goyla, right? But the problem is nishmat. Everybody agrees ein goyla by a soine. So according to Rebbe, how will he understand Reb Shimon? Where would a soine ever be goyla? Nifsak, where he might be innocent, ain't a goyla because it's not the right scenario to be b'chayiv golos. Nishmat never will a soina go into golos for nishmat. So how is Rebbe going to understand Reb Shimon? So you could say they argue. Rabbi's a Tana Polik, but Tosfos has a very simple solution. If he fell off the roof, if he himself fell off the roof, that's for sure a shoygig. That's a nishmat. That's for sure a shoygig. You know why? Because he's not going to risk his life to try to kill somebody. Letting go of a rope will take a team, but to fall off the roof himself wouldn't. So that's how Tosfos learns. Let's just look at,
and that's the mushal Rashi brings in Mishput.
Exactly. So let's have a look over here. Zok Tosfos in time of the Rebbe, Heichem Mishkachet Lo Soine Sheyigala Sheyigla. The Benishmat Oyev Goyla Lo Soine ever. V'Menifsek Afilu Oyev Ein Goyla. The angel Svara Loimer the less Leila Rebbe Reb Shimon. The Havarabbi Rebbe was a Talmud of Reb Shimon. So you can't say they were arguing. Yeshloimar the Mechamok Mishkachas Lo Kolin Shenofam and Agag Olav. The Yadu LaKoil Shaloi Nofam Midas. Shori Hoyab is Hakonis Makas. This can Hamas mention. No, the Malam mentions Zoy. Hamas mentions. So now let's see Rashi, how Rashi puts down what I explained outside. Zok Rashi, Nishbat like Kasha, Haboy of Habasainai, Nifsak like Kasha, Harabi of Arabanan, which is not like the Gersh of Gemara. Zok Rashi, Ha, the Katani, Nishmat Goila, it's only Ba'oyev. The Leichashu Dav Midas. With the Katani Nishmat Eina Goila is speaking Basainai. Get the Katani Behedya Bebraisa. Yei Sainai, the Eina Goila, Mufarish Milsa, if it's Nishmat, the Sainai would not go. Nifsak and Nifsak Lakasha Harabi Baraban. And I'm going to read Rashi not exactly the way it's printed because there are some Girsa changes in it. Hada Katani Nifsak Goila, Afilu Besainai, Nifsak is Goila. The Choshekain Ba'oyev. It's the Rabbanon of Rebbe. So it's not Rabbanon Alibud Rab Shimonu. It's Rabbanon the Rabbanon of Rebbe Alibud Rab Shimon. The Omar Nishmat Habarzel Mikitoi V'Hara Goyla. The Rabbanon hold that if you're still holding on to the handle of the axe, but the blade of the axe go flying, the Rabbanon of Rebbe who hold that there you go to Golos. And the Nivsak Achevel, so this is what Chaim was asking me that I figured we'll learn inside, you'll get it more clear. The Nivsak Achevel is Dumya, the Nivshmat Habarzal Mikatahi, Shanisher Agad Biyadai. By the string the Nivsak. The Nivsak Achevel is Dumya, the Nivshmat Habarzal Mikitai, Shanisher Agad Biyadai. Nivsak, you're still holding on to the string, but the string torn, the rest of it goes. So too, when the blade falls off the axe, you're still holding on to the handle, but the blade went flying. So there is a brayso that says Nifsak Eina Goyla. Who would that be like? According to Rabbi, Damar Nishmat Habarzal Mikita Eina Goyla. And therefore, Behuad in the Chevel Nifsak, the same thing similarly if the rope tore. Ad Sheyishmat Machtzale Miyadoi. The only time there'll be a chiyuv galus by an oyev, of course, is if it's yishmat machtalim yadoi shei nishar b'yadoi klum, where there's nothing left in his hands. This is the point that Chaim is looking for. Dumya the min eitem ispakeya. There's no part of the eitem ispakeya that remains. The whole eight goes flying. Ula Rebbe alibud Rab Shimon. So come to Chayis, according to Rebbe alibud Rab Shimon, ein lach soinei goyla will be impossible for a soinei to go into galus. Tosfos offers a hechatimsa if his whole body went flying. Rashi holds and Echanami. Kach Matzosi Girsa B'Tshuvas HaGoynim V'Cheinikah. And then the Girsa Svarim, he goes through the other Girsa and he says it doesn't make sense. But that's a long shtickle because there's a lot of Rishonim who actually are goyish the other way, the way that Rashi doesn't make sense. So it gets into a complicated shtickle. That's not we don't have time for now. Zok Gemara Vayter. Lahechan Goylim. This is very, very interesting. Where do they go into goals? Where is this goals? Where do you go to? Zok the Mishnah Ori Miklat. There's Ori Miklat. How many of them are? There's Shaloi Shebe'eva Yarden, Ula Shaloi Shebe'eretz Canaan. There are 3 in Transjordan and 3 in the Eretz Yisrael proper. Shenamar, it says in the pasuk, as Shaloi Sha'orim Titnu Me'eva Yarden, as Shaloi Sha'orim Titnu Be'eretz Canaan. Zok the Mishnah Chiddush. You can't say that the Yidden are in Eva Yarden, they didn't move into Eretz Yisrael yet. But in Nevar Yarden, they already have an Ari Miklat, so let's say they should be able to use it. Zok the Mishnah, no. Actually, Nifcharu Shaloi Shebe'eretz Yisrael lehayu Shaloi Shebe'evar Yarden Koltos. All of the all of the Ari Miklat were activated simultaneously, not as they were found. So Kum Tachois, even though they had Ari Miklat that were designated Neva Yarden, they were not cut until all of the cities that were supposed to be designated were designated, because it says in the pasuk, Shneimar Sheish Ari Miklat Tiyena Atiu Shoshton Kol Tois Kachas. They all have to come together. Now, there were always very well clear marked signs to get to the Ari Miklat, like we discussed yesterday, because we didn't want people to stop and ask for directions. Shenemar Tochin L'cha Derech. And the Sifta brings down that the Rishonim say it's not just street signs. The nicest paved roads, there were no potholes on these roads. A normal road was 16 amis wide. A normal Shusharabim, these roads that led to the Ari Miklat were 32 amis, and they were always in perfect condition. And when it says that B'Shchodesh Adar, Bezdin goes out to be ma'ayin the city to make sure that it doesn't need any maintenance, that's what they were looking for. They were looking to make sure that the roads that led to the Ari Miklat always were big and wide. There were no traffic jams. There were no potholes. They were good. That had that. I'm sorry. Arteries. That's right. Shenemar Tochin L'cha Derech V'Shilashta. When a Ritzeach would run to Golis, to run to the Ari Miklat right after he killed, where people are coming after him to kill him, they gave him 2 escorts, not big bulvan bouncers, 2 Talmidei Chachamim they sent with him. Shema, why? Shema Yargenu B'derech. Maybe the Goyal Adam will kill him before he gets to the Ari Miklat. Vayidaber Elov, meaning, Vayidaber Elov means that these 2 Talmidei Chachamim will say, Shulix, you felt an Hagenin. We didn't even pass him up yet. Maybe he's shogig, maybe he's honest. Calm down. So imagine, well, who would you rather have as bodyguards? 2 big Schwarzes or face the 2 Gedolei Adar? We're assuming that the Goyal Adam is an Erlich Yid. I don't know who the Goyal Adam would be more afraid of. Would be if 2 Rabbanim say Pastach nicht, he would stop. Maybe the 2 Schwarzes, but we gave him.
And 2 gegen die Schwarze.
Sagt the Gemara. Yeah, no, explain to you why. Because the Rabbunim each had 2 Schwarzes, protecting them. Sagt the Gemara. Reb Meir has no. The Rabbanim didn't talk for his defense. He will tell the Goyal Adam, please don't kill me. First, get the facts. The Ritzeach has to speak his own schus. Rabbi Yosy Bar Yehuda
kept him fast enough.
Darf ich nicht reden, weil Leute nicht die Kinder kennen. Very good. Rabbi Yosy Bar Yehuda Omer, Betchila, in the beginning, the beginning doesn't mean the beginning of times. It means right after someone kills, the first thing he needs to do, no matter if he killed b'mezid or if he killed b'shoigig, echad shoigig echad mezid makdimin lo Ari Miklat. The first thing you do is you get to the Ari Miklat as soon as you possibly can, so you're protected from the Goyal Adam. Then Bezdin gets involved. Bezdin sholchin to the Ari Miklat. Umavin oisasham. They bring him from there to Sanhedrin in a protected convoy, and they pass him. Nishin is chayiv misa bebezdin. If he's mechuyev misa, he was amazed with Edom and Asra. Hargu, they would kill him. He wouldn't get back to the Ari Miklat. But if Shalom is chayiv misa, if it turns out that he's not chayiv misa, patru, they pottered him and they let him go free, and the Goyal Adam wasn't allowed to touch him. And Umishin is chayiv golos, and those that were mechuyev golos, because it turned out being a shogig with all of the different conditions that a shogig that goes into golos has, machzir noishalim kaimoi, they send him back to the Ari Miklat. Where do you see that in the pasuk? Shenemar v'yeshivu oisa ya'eda al ir miklatai. Let's look at the whole pasuk so we have a better picture of what's going on. It says v'yitzilu ha'eda seritzeach v'yad Goyal Adam. The Bezdin saves him from the Goyal Adam. They take him to Bezdin first, and then v'yeshivu oisa ya'eda al ir miklatai, and they put him back. What does that mean? It means that he originally went there. They took him from there, and then they put him back. If in fact they passed him that he's deserving of those. Taner Rabbanan. Shalosh Orim Hivdil Moshe be'Evar Yarden. Ukenegdan, and Keneged the 3 Neve Yarden, Hivdil Yehoshua be'Eretz Canaan. And the they were actually lined up in parallel. So if you draw a east-west line in between the ones in the Evar Yarden and the ones in the Midbar, they would go right through them. It would be perfectly lined up. So there were 1, 2, 3 lined up vertically in Eretz Yisrael, and 1, 2, 3 lined up vertically in in Evar Yarden. So they form two perfect squares if you drew the lines in between the dots.
No, rectangle.
No squares. Oh, could be with rectangles. I'm no, what would have been squares, because even east and west they were evenly spaced out.
But that's a rectangle. If you have 3 and 2.
No, so I'm saying is if you connected all the dots, even the ones in the middle, so then you would get 2 squares. Yeah, the whole thing would be a rectangle. So Zakta Chevron be Yehuda. Chevron is to the north. Connected Betzer B'Midbar, which is towards the north. Right, Chevron is north of Eretz Yisrael. No, Chevron is south of Yerushalayim. So Chevron is south. Shechem Bahar. So Chevron is the most south, I guess. Shechem Bahar Ephraim. Connected Ramais Gilad, which was in Chutz La'aretz, and Kadosh Bahar Naphtali was connected Goyim B'Boshan. So Shechem was the lowest. Then came Chevron was the lowest. Then came Shechem. Shechem is above because Shechem is north of Yerushalayim. Chevron is south of Yerushalayim, and then all the way up to Goyim B'Boshan. Ushloi Vishilashta. The pasuk is Vishilashta. Sheyum Shaloshim. They have to be perfectly centered, meaning Sheyehemi Doraim from the southern border of Eretz Yisrael to Chevron should be the same distance as Kimei Chevron l'Shechem, and from Chevron to Shechem it should be the same distance as Shechem l'Kadesh, and Shechem l'Kadesh should be the same distance as Kimei Kadesh l'Tzafon, and the same thing would be by Evar Yarden. The thing would be in Evar Yarden as well. So basically, they were exactly spaced evenly. The problem that we're going to have, the Gemara is going to ask in a moment, which I had to snooze I saw this Gemara is, let's say they were 5 miles from the south border of Eretz Yisrael to the first Ar Miklat. Now there's only 5 miles between the Ar Miklat in Chevron to the Ar Miklat in Shechem, which means anywhere you are, you're no more than 2.5 miles away. By saying if you're at the bottom of Eretz Yisrael, you're 5 miles away. So it's not really even, right? Even would be is if wherever you were, it took the same amount of time to get there. So the Gemara is going to ask that kasha. The Gemara is going to answer because south of Eretz Yisrael there weren't so many Rotzchem, so they didn't need so to be so close. So the Gemara is going to get into that. And that's Anders. Because the Gemara, Frank the Gemara is that kasha. The Eva Yarden class, the Eretz Yisrael class, there are so many more people in Eretz Yisrael than there are in Eva Yarden. So how is it logical that there should be the same amount of our miklat in Eretz Yisrael as there are in Evar Yarden? There's so much more. As Rashi says, the Nachla Shnei Shvatim, which is in Evar Yarden, Shalosh Kemoy Benachlas Hazar Shvatim. It's funny because it's not two. It's really better than Chatzim Menashe.
But it's more because all the Ura Halaviyim, so they had 48 more states here.
But the question is how many people there were. Could be there were less people.
In Eretz Yisrael, they had 48 more. Besides,
even more than that.
Yeah.
But that's the Gemara. That's how is it fair that it should be spaced evenly? Zok the Gemara Amar Abaye because Begilad Shchichi Reitzchem in Evar Yarden. Rashi says there were a lot of Reitzchem. So Einich Nami they would have typically needed less per capita because there's so many less people, but not less with the same per capita because there's so many less people. But since there are so many Reitzchem there, they needed to have extra Ori Mikvah. Let's go weiter. The Chsiv says in the pasuk, Gilad, Kiryas, oil oven. Gilad was a city of people who do averis. Oin oven, not oven, ein oven. It's oin lashon damaging, hurting people. Akuva midam. It's full of dam. What does that mean? My akuva midam. Amar Beloja show you oikfin lahar nefashos. Rashi touches Orvin. They were constantly ambushing people to kill people. There was a lot of murder there. It was a problematic area, so they needed to have more Ari Mikla. Frank the Gemara, the kasha we mentioned earlier, the Merchaki. The bottom city is 5 miles from the bottom border, and the top city is 5 miles from the north border. It's not really 5 miles, I'm just picking that number. The Mitzioi, the Makarvi. There are only 5 miles in between them. Amar Abaye, because B'Shchem Nami Shchiche Reitzchem. In Shechem, which is north, there's a lot of Reitzchem around. So therefore, the Ari Mikla to the north of Shechem and to the south of Shechem, right, are closer to Shechem because you need a lot in the central region of Eretz Yisrael. You need a lot more Ari Mikla. The Chsiv and let me look at this pasuk inside. It's a very interesting pasuk. It says over here, ukechake. He's looking, or there are those who touch means he's looking towards it, like mechake. Where is the pasuk? The pasuk is ukechake ish gedudim. The same way bands of robbers are waiting and staking out to ambush innocent victims, the kohanim were very bad. Hovar kohanim derech yiraschu shchema. The kohanim also were trying to ambush people. Shchema Pashup Rashi is like their shoulder. In other words, they're shoulder to shoulder with the gangsters. Kizima also, because they did terrible things. But we darshan the pasuk Shchema means near Shechem. Now that's how the Metzudas learns. There are other Rishonim who learns that Shechema doesn't mean shoulder; it means Taka Shechem. But the Metzudas learns that Shechema means like our shoulder, the Kohanim shoulders were just like the gangsters. So my Chavar Kohanim, Amar Belazar, show you Mischabrim, they would get together in bands, Laharig Nefashos, Kitrehanim Alolu, Shemischabrim Lachloik Trumois Bevesagranos. So we're darshaning that these people would get together by Shechem the same way their swarms of Kohanim gather to take Truma. So okay, so we'll stop here. The Gemara talks about more
Yosy.
Well, give me one more minute. You tell me there's only 6 Ari Miklot. There were another 42 cities. True, there were more. But if someone just wandered into the one of the 6 Ari Miklot, even if he didn't know where he was, it would be koilet. But alolu, the extra 42 cities, ladas koltois, shaloi ladas ein koltois. Okay, we'll stop here. What did you want to ask me, Rabbi Joel?
Yosy.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yosy, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
So the Torah determined like 1,000 years later on where the Rutz.
I was wondering the same thing. Maybe what if things change?
Yeah, demographically, it's a whole could be
Things
completely.
move around.
Yeah,
Maybe we'll see in the Gemara, because maybe that's why they added the 42 cities, because maybe as the demographics changed, they had to add more. But I don't know. I'm hoping that'll come out tomorrow or the next couple of letter. Yeah, I was wondering the same thing. Just because Punkt at that time there's a lot of murders there. The Torah tells us like those 6 Ari Miklot.
In Eretz Yisrael is the 8th in Givein, 45 Uri Miklot. So it's nicht the Shale.
Well, that's what the Gemara just said now. But there's a difference in Ari Miklot. But what Shaul is asking is at the end of the day, it was totally in where the murder capitals were. So if they got a new district attorney who was very strict and murder would change, they would remove an Ari Miklot. I mean, the Torah is stealing it back loylam. So that's a very good point. I don't know the answer. Hopefully by tomorrow I'll be able to come up with a reasonable explanation.
Shechem is what has down the West Bank, right?
No. Shechem is the West Bank, that's right. Because that's where Yosef is buried, and they go there all the time. It's in the West Bank. Right.
So Hebron is mehr in
That's right.
Hebron kann doch nicht vom Platz sein. Right?
Right.
Halb von Hebron is Arabic.
Right.
That's quite natural.
Half of Shechem is Arabic, and the other half is also Arabic. But it's in Israeli. It's on the Israeli side. Even the Israeli side of Hebron is full of Arabs.
Right, but hast du the Hebron is. Ich weiß nicht, dort, ich bin bei der Kaiser, this is the